Hello, everyone. I'm James Pindle. I'm a politics reporter at the Boston Globe, and I'm joined with some great colleagues today. We've got Liz Goodwin, the Deputy Washington Bureau Chief for the Globe, Jasmine Ulloa, also a national politics reporter out of our Washington Bureau, and here with me in the Commonwealth is Vicki McGrain. So I just want to say from the outset, from all of us, thank you for subscribing to the Globe and being so engaged with content that you want to talk a little bit more about whatever that was last night in the presidential debate. I want to remind you that this is being recorded, so I think you're going to be sent an email afterward if you really want to watch this again. It's part of your greatest hits, I'm sure, for your Netflix lineup of what you're going to be watching on demand. And also, if you have any other questions, I know we have a lot of pre-submitted questions. This is a very popular topic and experience today. If you have them, you can go to the Q&A function and type them in. I see them right here on my screen, and we'll try to get to that as well as your pre-submitted questions. First, though, I do want to kick it off. If you want to unmute, I don't know if my colleagues have unmuted their screens or not, on what exactly it is you're drinking this morning. What was Liz, let's start with you. What's your main takeaway from last night? If you were to put it on a bumper sticker, what would that phrase be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one because obviously the biggest takeaway is like that it was just so chaotic. But I think moving aside from that, I feel like if I was going to take a bumper sticker, it would be that Trump is nervous. And the reason why that stood out to me is because I see him a lot, you know, in the White House, and he's always commanding so much attention. He's always trying to have a million press conferences every week. He's trying to take every single question. He loves to be in the spotlight, and he doesn't ever show any nerves. I mean, he loves the attention. So seeing him kind of sweating was really unusual to me. And like the approach he took to the debate of just trying to needle Biden and not even let him talk and talk over him, that's the behavior of someone who's really nervous. They don't want to have a back and forth. And it was different from how he approached 2016 when he seemed just much more confident in the debates.
Why do you think that was, Jasmine?
Yeah, to me, it would have been, did you say, why do you think it was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think his administration has been mirrored by a pandemic. 200,000 people are dead. He hasn't been able to respond to the racial crisis in this country. He's responded by unleashing the military on people protesting police violence and police brutality, particularly against Black Americans. Yeah, I think he's nervous. I mean, my takeaway was that it was not a debate. You had a candidate who was attempting to put forth a policy platform, and you had another who was trying to do everything in his power to derail it. And it was vintage Trump. You could say it was a vintage playbook. You know, it's very hard to debate with someone who prides himself on defying presidential norms, has been actively trying to further erode people's trust in institutions, and is sowing chaos by just spouting lies. But I do agree with Liz. He did seem nervous. I kept wondering, what is he afraid that Biden is going to say?
Mm-hmm. And Vicki, I think if I had to put on a bumper sticker, I would just put "Hot Mess 2020." Or actually, you know, there's those bumper stickers. I think we saw them at the beginning of the cycle, or even in 2016, where it said, what was it? A giant meteor for president. I think at this point, I don't know if I'm looking for giant. That may have bigger consequences, I think, but a smaller asteroid might actually bring us all together, you know?
I don't think my bumper sticker would be family friendly enough for us. You know, the edited version might be sort of chaos, lies, and white supremacy. I mean, the president of the United States was asked point blank, will you condemn white supremacists? And the takeaway was stand back and stand by. Maybe I got that in the wrong order. And stand back. He didn't even say stand down, I don't think. And
So weird.
Regardless, it was far short of an actual denunciation. And you just can't, that even in that, you know, softball question, he cannot bring himself to do the normal thing is just shocking. And, you know, were any minds changed last night? Probably not. But it was a very stark, unvarnished view of what this presidency has been and would continue to be 4 years from now. And so in that way, it was incredibly unnerving, I think, to watch.
When I gave grades last night, for context, I gave Trump an F, okay? But that said, I could see what Trump was trying to do. If you had studied Joe Biden's debate performances, leaving aside his pretty solid vice presidential performances, and I know we had a good story on that. I think, Liz, did you do that story about his past performances? So I want to take it to you for a second on that. If you look at his primary debates from 2020, he did get rattled when he was interrupted. He had a thing with rules. He had a thing with time. He would even cut himself off when he didn't have enough time, and he would get flustered. He couldn't even get his own text messaging thing right in his closing statement in one debate. So I can understand if Trump said, look, I am down by an average of 7 to 8 points. I need to shake things up. And the only thing that's going to shake things up that feeds a narrative is that Biden is unprepared because he makes some huge gaffe, because he either bursts in anger or just messes up. And if I can constantly just pester and be a jerk about it, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Maybe he is a forced error onto Biden, and then maybe something happens. Is that what you thought the strategy was? Or was there no strategy? It was just Trump just trying to make it the Trump show?
No, I agree with you. I thought that, if you look at what they've been saying about Biden for the past few months, their most consistent line of attack is that he is demented, right? Like they're putting out clips showing him messing up his words, whatever. That's all they really have got. And so I think that Trump went in hoping to confuse him and make him look like he didn't know what he was doing, fluster him to the point where he seemed like he was old and out of it, which is the only thing they have. Mm-hmm. And I think you could tell the Trump campaign was getting increasingly nervous going into the debate that they weren't going to have that kind of moment. And that's why they were saying, oh, he's on drugs, or he has a secret earpiece, or all these theories they're floating out, just, plain conspiracy theories. So yeah, I thought there was a strategy. I thought he went in and was just going to annoy the heck out of him and hope that he looked like the Biden that they've been telling the country is Biden, which is someone who can't string together a sentence, who's confused, who's emotional, erratic. And I think largely that strategy failed. Even though Biden did get annoyed, he didn't really seem incoherent or out of it, even though he was rattled. But I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, Trump was so over the top in that strategy that I think it backfired. And also, that's, I agree, that was clearly the strategy. But the president didn't marry that strategy with a message. It was just strategy. It was just, try to make Biden fall flat on his face. But there was no message, which he did have a pretty consistent message in 2016, which is, Hillary Clinton is part of the Washington swamp and corrupt, and I'm going to put her in jail. Whatever you think of that message, it was a consistent message. And I couldn't tell you what the president's message was last night.
Well, I had flashbacks to the impeachment hearings where the strategy was, on the part of Republicans, was sowing chaos, destruction, confusion, and seeding those very public hearings with these conspiracy theories. And we saw those kind of dog whistles, even those names. So I kept thinking back to the words of Joan Donovan, who's a disinformation researcher at the Harvard Shorenstein Center, who told me back then, it does behoove those who want to see Trump stay in power to sow that confusion because of our polarized and oversaturated media environment. These words like Pelosi, and just shouting socialism and shouting radical, just the word radical sometimes, not even radical Democrats, it was just radical. And there were some narratives in there that some phrases in there that seemed like if you're plugged into that right-wing ecosystem, that ecosphere, you know what he's talking about. There's deeper meaning within those simple words and phrases. So I kept thinking back to Donovan's words on that. And even then, all it takes, she said then, all it takes is a message of a conspiracy theory to send viewers to the internet to searching for more information. And she talked about how it reminded her a lot of those young adult books where those choose it your own adventure, where once you pick a name or a phrase or a key quality, a phrase that has that unique quality to it, you're going to go online and read about it. But again, I don't think it worked the same way this time around, especially, again, particularly because we're in a moment of racial reckoning. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We can't go outside, and have a normal meal at a restaurant or a normal vacation. So I think that reality is just, the alternate reality is crashing up against real reality.
I want to pick up on that, what you just said, Jasmine, actually, for a second. You quote Joan, and she said to another outlet before the debate that this first debate would be the Olympics of disinformation. I'm not really sure there was one line that people ran to Google, that Trump may have wanted people to Google on disinformation, except for maybe issues in Philadelphia or something like that. Did you catch anything that in particular that really would send people to their
it's not so much. Like I said, just Pelosi, radical Democrats, socialism, just shouting socialism in the middle. There was I think Vicky caught it last night in the live blog, the mention of the implication that there was a coup or something against him. Like that's all part of like QAnon conspiracy theories that are out there already. And
that postmasters are selling ballots or mailmen are selling ballots, which
again, yeah.
But yeah, you might Google.
Rigged election is just another one, or even that people are primed to think about those things.
The manifesto too, early on, he said something about a manifesto. I actually thought about Googling that, but forgot because I was like, what does that refer to?
I think he's referring to the joint agreement between Bernie and Biden, and we're going to call that the Democratic Manifesto, which is a phrase that Republicans like to use. Vicki, we talked about Trump. We've talked somewhat about Biden and his strategy. We get a lot of questions about Chris Wallace, and I don't know if this is fair to ask you or not fair to ask you, but what do you think about him? Does he bear any responsibility for how off the rails this debate became?
That's really hard to say. I mean, I'm certainly glad I wasn't in his because it is on the president of the United States, and I thought at times, he was actually pretty forceful. It sort of reminded me of I have a daughter in kindergarten, of a kindergarten teacher saying, sir, you need to settle down. So I'm not sure how many, you have to have a certain amount of gravitas to even be willing to do that. On the other hand, yeah, I mean, that was completely, there were long moments of it being completely out of control. I think more the Commission on Presidential Debates needs to take a really hard look if one of the candidates is not agreeing to follow the rules that were negotiated ahead of time, that there's been a lot of discussion. There needs to be an ability to cut off one of the mics. And then also a lot of speculation, maybe there shouldn't be any more debates if Trump is not going to follow the rules. So I don't think Chris Wallace covered himself in glory, but I'm also not sure how many people could have done a lot better job in that chaos.
Let's pick up on that. We have hundreds of people on the Zoom, and so many of their pre-submitted questions were basically on this theme. First, do you think that the Presidential Commission, which is the North Star of American politics, they do not comment, do not do anything, this is such an over-the-top event that they will need to come back and issue a statement, and one or two, actually make some changes?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, they're sort of not known for getting involved in any kind of political discussion. I do feel like I've at least seen like sort of a bipartisan agreement that the debate was like incoherent and not, and just kind of unwatchable. And I do think there's a danger of like, you just don't want to live in a country where like the presidential debate is unwatchable. Like we should be able to, it's a really important part of like deciding who to vote for in democracy. So maybe they will feel that pressure of like, we have to make this debate at least watchable, or else you're just, it almost amounts to kind of voter suppression to have debates that people can't understand or can't get anything out of. Like it's sort of a dangerous path in a way. So I don't know. I think the idea of cutting off mics makes a lot of sense if you just have a situation where people aren't following the rules or someone's not following the rules. And I did like that Chris Wallace said, you're interrupting more than he's interrupting, because he didn't have to say that. And I think coming from like a Fox News moderator, it just bears more credibility given Trump's attacks on other outlets, though he also attacks Fox News. But so I thought he did a good job on that, actually.
Jasmine, the next debate is a town hall debate. He's going to be, they'll both be taking questions from, in theory, everyday Americans. In the past, it has been undecided voters, though I think now there's like no undecided voters. I think there's like 3% they're undecided. So I don't know how that's going to work in particular, but the tone has to be different when they're actually interacting with everyday Americans, right?
I think so. I think we could see a different tone. I mean, I would hope so. I think echoing what has already been said here, I don't know how many friends turned off the debate, and again, bipartisan, across the political spectrum, how many people just turned off the debate last night because they just couldn't watch it. So you think, and that's another thing. Like I don't know who it was reaching, who Trump was reaching beyond his most stalwart supporters, his stalwart base.
He's clearly changing the subject. That's something he does a lot in his presidency. We were talking about chaos this morning, talking about yelling and interrupting and being rude, and we're not talking about coronavirus, which I think for him, he would think might be a win, though it was such a disaster about it.
But given where he stands in the polls,
yes,
and in key battleground states, one has to imagine the objective at least should have been going in for him to try and bring some of those people back into the fold, to make up some of the massive ground he has lost with women voters, with suburban voters. And I don't know, other than people who are watching Fox News 12 hours a day, that any of those people felt very good watching that debate. And that's what, in terms of, sure, he changed the subject as he always does, but is that the winning strategy right now?
Right. And Vicki, I want to stick with you. A lot of questions. I'm assuming when I asked Jasmine about the town hall that we are going to have one. A lot of people want to know, will there be actual more debates? What do you think?
I think that just the fact that is a question
Yes.
is, really telling. I think if you're Donald Trump, you still want to have more debates because, again, I don't think you accomplished what you needed to accomplish in that debate. And also, he famously loves all of the attention. Maybe he is happy with his performance. If you're the Biden campaign, that might be a harder calculation to make. I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to give Trump the sort of catnip to just go on, oh, you won't debate me, you won't debate me, you won't debate me. On the other hand, is it good for democracy to continue having those debates? I mean, there was a lot, especially at the end. One criticism I will make of Chris Wallace was Donald Trump was spewing a lot of conspiracy theories about and questioning and undermining the upcoming election, and saying, really casting extreme doubt on mail-in ballots, stuff that kind of goes beyond normal politics into really damaging the potential confidence in the election. And is that good to have huge viewership seeing that over and over again? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and there's such a battle right now for Latino voters, particularly in Florida, in Arizona, and it's been such a hard year. It's been a hard year for everyone. It's been a really hard year for Black voters, for Latino voters, for Black people, for Latinos. So they want to hear about policies. They want to hear about the platform. They want to hear about, the economy. What does it mean for jobs? What does it mean for small businesses? And there are a lot, maybe the number of undecided voters is small, but I think a lot of those voters are Latinos who haven't been plugged in and are traditionally late to plugging into debates and into the political discourse, and are often late to be, campaigns often don't reach out to them early on in the cycle. So a lot of people are just starting to tune in, and they want to hear from candidates what they're going to do. And so I think it's just a disservice.
Jasmine, you wrote a pretty seminal article a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago. I'm losing track of time in this COVID age. About it's not necessary, particularly with the Latino vote. It's not that they're undecided. It's will they vote? Do you think that last night may have turned off people? Just period. Politics say forget it. And particularly in the Latino vote?
I think that is a concern, but I woke up this morning to so many posts from friends, from even some reporters, from Black Latino friends, just more reinvigorated actually to vote and to get people to vote and to get others to register to vote. So there was a lot of fear in 2018 that people wouldn't come out, and people came out in huge droves. Who knows what it will look like in the middle of a pandemic? There were people actually knocking on doors, again, because they're such hard to reach populations. A lot of people speak Spanish or other languages, and not just Latinos, but the Asian community as well. So a lot of those traditional methods of reaching these really hard to reach underserved communities are not available right now. But I think more people are taking up the reins, are going to be calling and phone banking.
I got to tell you, Jasmine, on that point, I want to interrupt, but on that point, last night, about 7 or 8 minutes in, I was like, how in the heck is this being translated on Spanish television? It's all crosstalk. I mean, how do you do this? Sorry, we got to cut you out with Vicky. Were you saying something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, to piggyback off what Jasmine was saying, one of the ironic results of that debate might have been helping solidify Democrats behind Joe Biden. I mean, he was not the choice of a lot of very progressive activist types, and yet Donald Trump gave committed Democratic base voters so much motivation to turn out, to phone bank, to donate. I mean, the Biden campaign said the 1 hour of the debate was their highest fundraising haul, like a record fundraising haul. So, to the extent that everybody's made up their mind and it comes down to turnout, as it always does, I mean, this gave the left a lot of reasons, even if Biden's not their favorite guy, to still go out.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I want to incorporate some of the questions we have from so many questions from readers. One of them, and by the way, if you're watching, you can go to the Q&A function. I'm seeing them all here on my screen, and I'm getting alerted from people back in the office about some good questions. I see one here from Jack, and Liz, I want to pick up on Vicky's comment. Jack asked, did Biden have enough to say to energize progressives? Jack didn't hear it, and Trump constantly said, well, you lost the left on that one, you lost the left on that one. What did you make of that? Are progressives more enthused after that debate or less enthused?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Vicky in that I think in a way Trump sort of provides the energy to Democrats right now. I mean, and you see it in the polling, right? Like it's not like Biden has all these people saying, I'm so excited to vote for Biden, right? Like Trump has more of those people actually, but he also has more people who are so excited to vote against him. Like that's Trump's problem, is like he energizes on both sides, but way more on the negative side right now. And I think the fact that he went out and like did a weird call sign to the Proud Boys and wouldn't condemn white supremacists, like that's energizing to Democrats. Like that's the kind of thing that reminds people why they want to vote him out. And, Biden's clearly decided that for him, there's more a risk in people actually believing this socialism thing than in progressives staying home. And that's why he says, I am the Democratic Party. Like, we're not doing universal health care or whatever. Like he's been consistent on that for a reason, because they've made that calculation. And I think, given the polling, I think it's the right one, but we'll see.
This was really the Trump show, wasn't it, Jasmine? When we wake up this morning, the two snippets, there are things that are being talked about, which is as important as watching the debate. We'll find out the actual numbers of how many people actually did watch this, if it was record breaking. And what I want to know is how many people turned it off during the course of the 90 minutes. But Jasmine, the two clips that are all over the place are just crosstalk, yelling back and forth, or not yelling, but discussing back and forth, interrupting. And second, it was this inability to condemn white supremacy. So going forward, nothing has changed these poll numbers. Will this debate actually change poll numbers, or is this race just stuck?
I mean, who can say, right? I can't make any, from what I'm seeing from people is that Trump really drew a line in the sand last night, especially for Black Americans. Like this, that inability to condemn white supremacy is not, is just unacceptable. It's not even about politics anymore, or And, as someone who covered, I came to politics, I came to politics from covering crime and courts. And so in 2014, 2015, what FBI investigators were really looking at then, were really tracking was
Jasmine,
young Muslim men on the internet. Oh, sorry. Hello?
yeah, we had a little
Can you hear me?
technical difficulties there. I can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where, oh, is it cutting off? Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the concern of FBI agents then was ISIS and the radicalization of young men online, into the ranks. But what they really should have been concerned about was white supremacy, because even then, when I was working and tracking, interviewing families, Muslim families about, the radicalization online, I kept hearing from families then, people of color then saying, I'm more afraid about a white man entering my church or entering, my place of worship or where I shop and shooting me and shooting my family, shooting people who look like me. And we already had so many of these incidents. It's the Charleston church shooting, the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, the El Paso shooting, my hometown. Like, words matter, and words yeah. So this is I think very, very concerning to people of color who have felt under assault for 4 years and longer.
Liz, can we step back for a second? I know our colleague Jess is on her way to go to Minnesota right now. I was just hearing from her in the airport. Can we walk a little bit through the electoral map as it stands now? And did this debate change anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so I think it's funny that Trump is really obsessed with Minnesota, since trying to expand the map right now, if you're Trump, seems like an odd move. Like, you'd think he would just be playing defense. Vicky had a great story about him trying to expand the map in New Hampshire too. Like, they think both of those states are in play for them. In Minnesota in particular, he really pushes a very overtly racist message. And I think that's why he thinks that state could be good for him, because, white people are going to be alienated by the George Floyd protests there, and the presence of a pretty large refugee population from Somalia. So when he goes there, the last time he was there just a couple weeks ago, he was, sort of saying all this weird stuff about the genetic superiority of the people at the rally. How do you like your refugees? Ha ha ha, they're terrible. Really ugly stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. It seems to be his play right now when he is in the Midwest, and polling shows Biden ahead in all those key states that got him the White House last time. So that's worrisome. That's why he's the underdog right now. And I don't think anything about this debate changes that dynamic necessarily. I don't know. What did you think?
No, I don't. I mean, one thing you have to remember is in 2016, everyone's having flashbacks that it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win, and then she did not. But I think we have to remember that a couple things are different. One, in the polling in 2016, Hillary would be up 3, 4, 5%. Biden's up 7, 8, 9%. Once you get below 5%, I don't really like national polls, but because we don't have a national election, we have state by state elections in an electoral college. But the general rule of thumb among analysts is that once you get below 5% lead, now we start talking about, well, exactly what is happening in North Carolina and Virginia and Ohio, and you go through the list. But you're above 5%, you're probably going to win. And that's where Joe Biden consistently remains. And second, and I think the biggest structural thing, and one thing we did not see on this stage last night, was a third-party candidate. Third-party candidates got 6%, I think it was, of the vote last time. That they're gone. We could argue about which way they certainly would have gone. But the Libertarians were sort of a home for disaffected Republicans last time. Of course, Bill Weld from Massachusetts being on that ticket, and who ran against Donald Trump as proof that it was for the disaffected Republicans. And then, of course, on the Green Party was sort of a vote that may or may not have gone towards Hillary Clinton. There have been various studies, particularly in Wisconsin, showing if that may or may not have been true. But look, overall, Donald Trump did nothing to expand his base. What's amazing to me, and maybe anyone can chime in, is heading into the debate, the bar was so low for both candidates. right? If you listen to Trump in the campaign, basically, if Joe Biden did not come on the stage and drool and he was able to like stand, he would have a winning debate. They set low expectations so low about Joe Biden that he would probably exceed them. At the same time, for President Trump, if he had just come out and looked presidential, like, here's a plan on coronavirus or something big, even if it would want to make it like a surprise, like, hey, here's the healthcare plan I've been promising was going to happen every 2 weeks. He would have gone a long way. And that's kind of crazy to say that the bar is so low that one person has to just show up and be there and the other person just has to like look presidential. But do you agree with that? Anyone?
Yeah, I think the bar was incredibly low for both of them.
And yet they still failed us.
Right.
Still went under.
And there's definitely been moments where Trump has seen a little boost. Like he has super low approval ratings, historically low, but like, you know, right after coronavirus, actually, he kind of ticked up and, you know, he was like almost at 50%, which I think he may have never hit, if that's possible. And so there was kind of this moment where people wanted to come together, and he had that moment like right before he said it'll be gone by Easter, where he was like, let's try to stay home and beat the virus. And people were really willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. So yeah, I think, you know, I've talked to Democratic strategists who have said like the luckiest thing that ever happened for Democrats is that Trump can't expand his base. He could have just done a transportation bill and like just talked normally and not said anything about white supremacists, and, you know, he would be president for life. You know, there's people who feel that way about him because they just feel like it's an unforced error that he's unable to talk outside of his like sort of rally speak.
Jasmine, we're getting a lot of questions on two particular smaller points. One, I know you're not involved in the TV production of the presidential commission debates, nor am I, but there are a lot of people want to know why logistically the mics cannot be shut off. I don't know if that's true. The presidential commission even allows that. And by the way, Trump would just talk loudly. So, I mean, you could still probably hear him on the stage. But the second I do want to ask you about, which is what's the role of fact checking last night? Was there was a lot of lies. Let's just call them out for what they were. Was there so many that, I mean, what's the role of fact checking last night?
Yeah, I believe, I'm going to get his name wrong. Daniel Dell said, and it was an avalanche of lies.
Just from Trump.
Right, right. Just from Donald Trump. And he said, I'm going to get blasted for this, but it's a fact. Yeah. So, I mean, it's crucial. It's important. But I mean, how can you even, how can you do it at such a breathtaking speed as what happened last night? It's a monumental, it's a monumental task.
Vicki, you are on.
Trump lied from everything to saying that all of his rallies had been outdoors, which is not true.
That's true. That's right.
And I myself went to an Eric Trump event in New Hampshire for that story, which I felt I had needed. I went and got a coronavirus test afterwards because it was 100 people inside, and they don't want to wear masks. I think the most damaging ones again go to this, completely based on nothing claims that mail-in ballots are rife with fraud, and that's where I feel like the debate moderator can't be constantly fact checking everyone, but when it comes to the integrity of the election itself, not to have interrupted or called that out or say that this is based on no information and is in fact a lie is kind of beyond but it's hard because this isn't something we've, as a democracy have had to grapple with, a president who's willing to lie to that extent.
Right. I think we're realizing how much of our systems are based on trust and just actors acting in good faith, and that is just being shredded. And to add to that point, because the DC Bureau, Liz and I, we just and Jess Bidgood, we just did this whole project on election security, on voter suppression and what it actually looks like in the history, our decentralized system. And the thing we kept hearing from elections officials over and over and over again was Yes, they're concerned about disinformation. Yes, they're concerned about securing their machines and having, cybersecurity and making sure they have the right ballots in place and having enough poll workers. But on top of all of that, on top of managing all these mini elections within this much larger election, is this problem of the president and the lies that are coming from the White House on the integrity of the system. Our system is based on trust. We're working as hard as we can to make this possible, make this happen. And how can we do that when we're constantly having to spend so much time counteracting the falsehoods?
And I think, if there was any strategy for Trump last night, it was rather than trying to expand his base, it was to try to seed doubt in the integrity of the election. That seemed to be a goal, and to encourage his people to go out. This also happened when I was in New Hampshire, to become poll watchers. And things like that, which could be read as voter intimidation for people. If there's in Virginia, there was those images of Trump supporters blocking people who were showing up to vote in person early.
That was the other thing too, where he said, go watch the polls. That is very scary for Latinos, for Black voters who have been harassed, especially Latinos, immigrant Latinos, newly and Asian voters, many of them who are immigrants, who in 2016, reported being harassed by Trump supporters.
Liz, we didn't discuss Biden enough so far. What do you think of his performance?
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there were missed opportunities. Like, I think Vicky just mentioned, not pointing out that not only did Trump have an indoor rally, but like Herman Cain died, after it. Like, that was pretty crazy. And I thought the first answer on the Supreme Court, they were both actually really muted when it first started, but he didn't really frame that debate at all, like the way that Democrats frame it. As this kind of like stolen seat and yada yada. It's just, if you were just tuning in, you wouldn't really get a sense of the way that like Democrats frame a lot of issues. Like, because I think Biden was a little bit wasn't the sharpest, honestly, in a lot of his framing. But then there were things that I thought he did well, especially given the constant onslaught. I thought it made sense that he would turn to the camera and he would always try to address people instead of like getting into it. You could tell he really practiced that. And I thought when he was going after Hunter, his response on like, this isn't about my family or your family. I could say some stuff about your family, but this is about Americans and American families and what they want, and you're distracting. So I thought that you could tell he came prepared for the personal attacks. I'm not sure how much like him, when he says, "Shut up, man," or "clown," I'm not sure how much of those moments were like Biden just actually getting annoyed and veering from the script versus, he had prepared to push back in that way. I don't know if, like, personally, I didn't think it really reflected badly on Biden or would have alienated people, but I'm not sure. I did see some people saying, it's just both of them insulting each other. And maybe that added to this perception that Biden too is insulting and they're not talking about the issues. But also there's the risk of looking like you're just getting walked over when someone's talking smack about your family.
I also wondered the extent to which Biden calling him a clown, saying Donald, it seemed a certain amount of psychological warfare in there, because Biden didn't come across as getting flustered, but it did to me sometimes come across as like he knows this is gonna fluster Trump right back, to just sort of not rise to the bait, kind of brush him off without even looking at him. So I wondered how much of that was, there seemed to be on both sides a certain amount of like premeditated psychological warfare going on, trying to get under the other's skin. But I otherwise, agree with Liz. I thought, was that the greatest debate performance we've ever seen? No, but given what was going on the other side, it's, I'm not sure who could give a great performance. But Biden has never been a particularly strong debater, but he did have these moments where this empathy and this direct connection with the voter really came through. I mean, that also was talking about Hunter when, Trump is bringing up his drug use, and he had this moment where he's like, yes, he did, and he overcame, you know, like lots of families, you know, he struggled with it and he overcame it, and I still love him. And I saw a lot of people on social media saying that like very much touched and affected them, and it was such a human moment.
Yeah, that incantation of my son, my son, my son. It was just, to me, it was pretty haunting to hear it. It sounded almost biblical.
Yeah, I mean, Vicky, I think I read the stat somewhere that there's 20 million Americans or American families that have been impacted by drugs, and so that obviously that could be a unifying call to that. You know, on Biden, look, overall, Trump lost this debate. I think we all agree on that. But Biden didn't lose. He didn't win. You know, these debates, particularly when you are having a challenger facing off against a sitting president, it's often about the challenger in those first 30 minutes, about whether or not Americans can see that person being president. And maybe people felt that I was too harsh on Joe Biden when I was grading him, because I would make the comment that he looked old, he looked tired, he wasn't able to do the fight. And I think what's really key here is that you're not winning to win a trophy. This is not a sports competition. If you win, you get the job of the most complicated, hardest job in the world. And so do I know what I would do if Donald Trump started interrupting me nonstop? I have no idea. I'm also not trying to be the president of the United States. We're asking this person to sit across the table from Putin and from President Xi, who's playing the long game in China, and to sit across from Kim Jong-un. Some of the most complicated, hard chess matches with erratic folks. So did Biden overcome that level of, you know what, I think he would be a great president? I don't know if he did last night. However, I think it was pretty clear that he was able to say, I don't want that other guy to be president for another 4 years, because of the way that Trump handled it. Maybe I'm over the top. Feel free to push back.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, from back into, you know, covering Biden during the primary a few times, and I also covered him in 2008 during the general election. I mean, he more than a Bernie Sanders, he comes across as, you know, subdued and at times older, but things that I think would be much greater liabilities if Democrats weren't seeing this election as like an existential moment, do or die.
It does make you wonder, like, what would this debate have been like if someone else had won the primary? Because like you're saying, we don't know how anyone would react to that level of kind of constant badgering from the president. But yeah, like, what would an Elizabeth Warren have done? What would a Kamala Harris have done? Like,
I would have paid money to see Elizabeth Warren debate Donald Trump in that way, because she was so effective in eviscerating, you know, Bloomberg and Delaney.
Even Biden.
Even Biden. She just, but again, there was more just the mechanics of the debate. Obviously, she did not win the primary. And so this is.
And to flip it around, I think that if Joe Biden had debated Mitt Romney or George W. Bush, they would have had his lunch. That's just me. So if you are, and I'll put this to Jasmine, if you are Team Biden, you have another debate. So maybe the town hall is different because the president has to act differently, but you have a third debate. What do you think you say going forward? You know, now that we know this is what he's going to do, what do you do?
I think he needs to keep focusing. I think he needs to stick to the message, stick to his platform, try to get as much of that out there as possible, try to speak like what he was trying to do, speak directly to the American people on COVID. I think the response, the mishandling of the pandemic response should be front and center. I mean, I think that's what you're seeing, you know, longtime Republican strategists that are, you know, are disaffected or feel disillusioned by this presidency, and even progressives are working together, particularly on reaching Latino voters, is really that message of like how poorly the pandemic has been handled, what it's going to mean for jobs, and really counteract, you know, really sticking to the facts on that economic record, because there is a record now. And I remember in 2016, I spoke to so many Republican voters who were, you know, heading to the polls that day, and they said, oh, it's not real. Like, you know, he's bashing Mexicans, but it's not real. He's not really actually going to do that. That's just him trying to win an election. No, now there's a record. Now we've seen the implication, the impact. So that, I think that focusing on that record is going to be crucial, on Trump's record is going to be crucial.
Liz, this is an exclusive event for our awesome Globe subscribers. We really appreciate everyone supporting our journalism. And so since they're supporting us, can we lift the hood a little bit? Is there anything you think the Washington Bureau will be working on after this debate in terms of something that caught your eye that we should dive a little bit more deeper into?
Yes. Well, I only participate in exclusive events, so I'm glad to be here. So I think we're going to be looking at the president's like white supremacist moment in this debate. I think that'll be our first follow, just because it's interesting that this is something that hurts him politically, generally. Like after Charlottesville was one of his lowest moments politically, and yet he just keeps happening. He keeps doing it. And I think he wanted the story of this debate to be Biden looking, you know, old and out of it. And instead it's about that. And so we're probably going to be looking at that. I think we're also going to be looking at Biden's performance and like, what do people think he could do next time? Just given that that was such a uniquely unwatchable debate, and the tactics that Trump is using are really unprecedented. So is there anything he could do to make it better? Basically the question you just asked, I think, is another thing we're looking at, and I don't have the answer to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vicki, Jasmine, and Liz. I'll leave us all on a positive note. If there's one thing I think the debate did last night, remarkably against the odds, Donald Trump and Joe Biden brought together a deeply divided nation to say with one voice, under God, boy, that was horrible. Thank you so much for everyone for coming. We hope to do more of these events in the future, and thank you again for subscribing.